Hey everyone, it's Rachel at Forage for Food. Today I want to introduce you to Sassafras. This is Sassafras. Sassafras is a really easy tree to identify. It's got different shaped leaves. So for example, this leaf has a little thumb that's going off to the left. This one has a little thumb that's going off to the right. This one doesn't have any thumbs on it at all. This one has two thumbs. Right, so different leaves on the same plant have different shapes, and there's very few things that do that. In the Great Lakes area, mulberry does that as well, but you can easily distinguish between sassafras and mulberry by picking a leaf, crushing it, and smelling it. And it smells like Fruit Loops, very much like Fruit Loops. Some other identifying characteristics of this plant is the way that the twigs grow. The bark on the young twigs is very bright green yellow, and then as the twigs age, that green yellow kind of transitions into a reddish orange. So the twigs are distinct. The bark on the big tree has this reddish orange color in it a little bit, but the bark on the big tree isn't as distinct as the bark on the twigs. So some identifying characteristics being the way the bark is on the twigs, and the fact that it has these different shaped leaves that smell like Fruit Loops. So that's for ID. It's growing in the woods, especially along the edges of woods. It likes to be in places where there's oaks, cherries, maples, so hardwoods. Prefers not wet, not dry areas. So what are you going to do with this? There's several things you can do with sassafras. The leaves are fillet powder, so they become fillet powder when you dry them. So you could pick a handful of leaves, dry them, and have your own fillet powder to make gumbo with. They also, the dried leaves work really well as a thickener for gravies. So they are a thickener, kind of like a little bit like cornstarch. So they'll add thickness to something, and they also are a seasoning. So they, unlike cornstarch, they have a flavor as well as the thickening properties. So it's something that you just have to play with and see if you like it. I personally find it to be a really fun spice to work with. You don't have to use it in a gravy or a gumbo. You could use it powdered as a seasoning on chicken or fish also. So it could be used as an herb. So just some different things to think about. Play with it, see what you like about it. The bark on the twigs, the younger twigs, can also be used as a seasoning. So you would just shave the bark off of the twig and then put it in a coffee grinder and grind it up. And that can be used in places where you might use cinnamon or nutmeg or clove. So it has kind of that same flavor profile as those aromatics. And then also the root bark can be harvested, and to harvest the root bark I would actually, I'm going to go into the woods a second here, and right here there's a little cluster of young sassafras, and this is actually where I would harvest from, because there's a baby one here, there's another one here, there's another one here, another one there, there's another one right there, there's another one there, so another one down there. So there's a whole bunch of baby sassafras right here. Not all of these can grow up and become mature trees because they're just too dense. So this is where I would harvest from, and I would just pick one, maybe this one here, and go down to the base of it, dig around until I can pull it up, and then once I can pull it up, pull up the root. And the thing is that all of these little baby ones here together are coming from one root mass. So I'm just thinning it out so that the bigger ones can grow, and the root that's down there is actually going to be bigger than the trunk of the tree. So even though this is fairly narrow, the root is probably as big as my thumb, if not bigger around. And it's the bark that you want anyway. So you could easily pull up a 12-inch long chunk of root underneath this little tree. And then you would also have your bark for your seasoning on here, and your leaves for your fillet powder. So just harvesting that one little baby tree that's probably never going to make it to adulthood anyway is a whole year's worth of seasoning right there. And there you have it, an introduction to sassafras in under 5 minutes.